Today, we're going to decode a powerful force that's operating just beneath the surface of the modern economy. We're talking about the secret architecture behind the world's most resilient, most cult-like brands. This is the Identity Transformation Engine.
Just let that sink in for a moment. Right now, someone is choosing a product that might be objectively not as good as yours. It's not about the price. It's not about convenience. It's about something much, much deeper, something almost primal. And understanding that reason, well, that's the key to everything we're about to cover.
All right, let's get into it. We're going on a 6-part journey to really unpack this. We're going to start by shattering a myth most of us believe. Then we'll look at the market shift that made all this necessary. After that, I'll reveal the 4-stage engine itself. We'll explore the deep psychology that makes it run. I'll give you a blueprint to build your own. And finally, we'll completely reframe how we think about growth.
So to start, we have to unlearn the very first rule we were probably taught about business. We've got to face this fundamental mistake that keeps so many companies trapped in a race to the bottom. It's something called the utility illusion. This right here, this is the core paradox. For years, the playbook was simple, right? Find a problem, build a solution. Need to edit a video? Here's some software. Need to manage a project? Here's a tool. We were all taught to focus on utility, but that's not what's really going on inside your customer's head. The problem they're really trying to solve isn't functional, it's existential. They aren't just asking, how do I do this thing? They're subconsciously asking, who do I want to become by doing this thing?
And because of that, the entire playbook has changed. The old world was all about user experience. How easy is the tool to use? But the new reality is about self-experience. How does using this tool make me feel about myself? We've shifted from just selling disposable tools to initiating disciples into a whole belief system. It's a move from simple user acquisition to something called ontological integration. Now that's a heavy term, but it's simple. Ontology is just the study of being. So this means the brand becomes a fundamental part of the user's being, their actual sense of who they are. It's not a tool they use anymore, it's a piece of their identity.
Now this huge shift, it didn't just happen in a vacuum. It was actually born from a crisis in the market. We need to look at how the ground literally shifted under our feet, forcing this evolution. This isn't just some new trend, it's a survival mechanism.
Sometime in the mid-2020s, we hit this crazy inflection point, functional parity. Thanks to AI, no-code tools, and the cloud, any startup could basically clone the core features of an industry giant in a few months. Seriously. A new project management tool could replicate 80% of what the big players do almost overnight. So that traditional advantage, just having the best features, it just vanished. Suddenly being functionally better wasn't enough to win. It was just the price of admission.
And the data from this time? It was brutal for anyone who didn't adapt. Customer churn went through the roof. But here's the fascinating part. The products weren't breaking, they weren't buggy, they were just meaningless. They had no soul. They were commodities in a sea of sameness. And in a world of infinite disposable tools, people started flocking to the one thing that you can't copy, a sense of belonging, a shared identity. The only advantage left standing was something we now call tribal alignment.
Which brings us to this powerful idea. A brand's job is no longer just to solve a problem. Its job is to be a mirror that reflects the user's ideal self back at them. It shows them who they could be, who they're becoming, just by using this product. See, in this new world, the product isn't a hero. The user is. The brand is just the mirror that proves it.
So, this brings us to the core of it all. If the goal is to build this powerful tribal alignment, how do you actually do it? Let's pop the hood and look at the specific mechanics that turn a casual user into a passionate, die-hard advocate.
And I want to be really clear here. What we're about to go through, this isn't a marketing checklist. This isn't about picking a new tagline or a color scheme. This is a deep, systematic process of human transformation. You should think of it like alchemy, a precise 4-stage process for turning something common, a user, into something incredibly precious, a true advocate.
Okay, the engine has 4 stages. First, aspiration identification. Second, tribal ritualization. Third, social signaling. And the final, most powerful stage is self-concept lock. Let's break down each one.
Stage 1 is all about completely rewiring how you think about your customer. You have to stop asking, what problem does my user have, and instead start asking, who does my user desperately want to be? The old way was selling a code editor to a developer. The new way is selling the identity of a 10x engineer. You're not selling the car, you're selling the destination.
Stage 2 is where you build the culture. This is so important. Tribal ritualization is about creating shared behaviors and a private language that outsiders just don't get. These sacred acts, it could be specific workflows or keyboard shortcuts, or special ways of using the product that signal you're an expert. And the vocabulary, that's just as crucial. When a company calls its users architects, that's not just some cute marketing gimmick. It's an act of labeling. It separates the in-group from the out-group. It gives status to the people who are in the know, creating this subtle, powerful boundary that makes belonging feel exclusive and really valuable. Now, once someone feels like they're part of the tribe, they have this deep, innate need to show it off. And that's what Stage 3 is for, providing the tools for social signaling. We can call these badges. Sometimes it's a literal badge on a profile, but usually it's more subtle. It's a distinct aesthetic, a recognizable design, or a signature workflow. You know, when someone shares a screenshot of their work from a specific tool and other people in that field instantly recognize it, that person isn't just sharing a project. They are broadcasting their identity and their membership in the tribe.
And that leads us to Stage 4, the endgame, self-concept lock. This is where the brand goes from being just a tool they use to being a fundamental part of who they are. It gets so woven into their daily life, their professional status, their self-image, that the thought of leaving becomes painful. To switch to a competitor wouldn't just be an inconvenience. It would cause real psychological discomfort, a state called cognitive dissonance. It would feel like a betrayal of their own identity. It's like asking a diehard Apple user to switch to an Android. It's not just a change of phone, it feels like a change of self.
So we've covered the what and the how, but to really master this, we have to understand the why. Why does this work so well? Let's dive into the deep-seated, universal human drivers that make this engine so powerful. This is the physics of belonging.
So yeah, why is this so effective? I mean, this isn't just a bunch of clever marketing tricks. This system taps into the fundamental wiring of the human brain. The reason it works is because it's completely aligned with who we are as a species.
Okay, the first principle comes from social identity theory. For hundreds of thousands of years, our survival literally depended on being part of a tribe. So our brains evolved to constantly scan our environment for in-groups and out-groups. Belonging meant safety, exclusion meant danger. So when a brand gives us a strong tribal anchor, a clear identity with its own language and rituals, it triggers that ancient prehistoric safety reflex. We feel like we're home. We feel safe.
Now, the second principle is maybe even more powerful. It's called cognitive consistency, and it's what creates that lock-in effect we talked about. See, once we adopt an identity, like I'm a designer and real designers use this tool, our brain will work overtime to protect that choice. It will literally filter reality. It'll ignore or downplay information that contradicts that identity. It'll find a million reasons why a competitor's better features don't really matter. Why? Because the psychological pain of admitting I chose wrong or my identity is flawed is way greater than the practical benefit of switching. Our brain will choose to be consistent over being right almost every single time.
And it all comes down to this simple, profound truth. Every purchase we make, every subscription we sign up for, it's an act of optimism. It's a vote for future, better version of ourselves. The product is just the physical proof of that internal transformation we're hoping for.
Okay, so we get the theory. Now let's make it practical. How do you actually build one of these things? This next part is the blueprint for shifting your thinking from being a product manager to becoming what we'll call a cultural architect. Yeah, this isn't about managing a backlog of features anymore. This is about consciously and deliberately designing a culture, an identity, that people are desperate to join. So how do you step into that role? How do you actually architect a modern tribe?
Well, there are 3 clear, actionable steps to get started. First, audit the aspiration. Get your team in a room and stop asking what pain point you solve. Instead, ask what status you provide. Who is the hero your user wants to become? Define that ideal self with absolute, piercing clarity. Second, engineer the tribal vocabulary. Brainstorm and create your own shorthand, your own private language that makes your users feel like insiders. And third, implement the signaling mechanism. Design a clear, obvious, recognizable way for your members to show off their status to their peers.
This really sums up the whole mindset shift. Your job is no longer just about building features that perform a function. Look, that's just the starting point now. The real work, the work that creates lasting value, is architecting a system that reinforces and elevates your users' ego, their sense of self. Your product becomes the stage where they get to perform their ideal identity.
And so we come to our final section,
This is where we connect this whole philosophy back to the thing every business is chasing: sustainable, meaningful growth.
This is where the hard numbers meet the human heart. The cold business logic is undeniable. Brands built on identity have much higher lifetime value and way lower churn. The unit economics are just better. But the human truth behind those numbers is that we are all, deep down, searching for meaning. We want to know that we matter. We're looking for partners in our own evolution. And an identity-driven brand fulfills that deep, universal human need.
If you take one thing away, let it be this. In a market that's flooded with functionally identical options, this huge, gaping canyon of commodity, the only way to build a lasting connection with your customer is to build a bridge of identity. That's the only thing that will stand the test of time.
For so long, we've thought of marketing as this funnel, right? Something we have to aggressively push people through. But this model, it flips that completely on its head. When you build a powerful identity, you don't need to push. You create a center of gravity. You become a source of value so compelling that it pulls people towards you, naturally and willingly.
And so, we'll end with this. Growth isn't just a straight line you get by pouring more money into ads. True, sustainable growth is learned. It's the natural result of deeply, obsessively understanding your customer's identity and then building a world where they can finally become the person they've always wanted to be.